Hello again, indie game fans. Welcome back to I Dream of Indie. This is Ole Gamer Joe here with another review for you today, or if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome. It's good to have you. Consider hitting the subscribe button. It helps us bring a voice to the voiceless ones in gaming. Today we're taking a look at Unto the End on the Nintendo Switch, a game that had previously been released on the PlayStation 4, Xbox platform, Steam PC, and Stadia. It is currently priced at $19.99 at the time of this review, with a little bit of a discount going on. Normally this title will be priced at $24.99. It is developed by 2 Ton, and it was published by Big Sugar. If you have been following this channel for a while, then you probably already know that Ole Gamer Joe really enjoys a good cinematic action platformer, Out of This World or Another World, Flashback, Ministry of Broadcast from this year. I absolutely love those games, but this can be a polarizing genre, there's no doubt about it. The clunky controls aren't going to be for everyone, and that's very much still the case in Unto the End, a game where you find yourself trying to make your way home. You play as a nameless warrior who got really off the beaten path somehow. I could try to tell you there's some deeper meaning or lore here, but there really isn't. This is just a journey of exploration, discovering yourself, and trying to make your way home. We've all felt lost at one point or another, and we just want to get back to where we feel like we belong. I felt like there was something nice and poignant about the fact that there's really no dialogue to read here, there's no cutscenes, it's just about you and the journey, so this is a game that does a really good job of telling a story without really having to say much. Getting home will be no easy task, however, as you'll need to explore a wide variety of different caves, snowy mountains, and you'll have to deal with the occasional cave troll and other monsters and obstacles that will get in your way along the journey. Thankfully, though, your character is not totally inept at combat in Unto the End. You do have a giant sword that you'll need to use against some of these cave trolls and other creatures, and you also carry a torch with you, which is going to be very important as many of these caves are extremely dark, but I was ultimately surprised how deep this combat system actually goes. You will need to carefully read some of your enemies, as you have both a high attack and a low attack depending on the stance that you find your enemy in, but they can do the same thing to you, attack you from above or attack you from below, so you can actually block high or block low. You also have the ability to duck in this game, as some of these troll creatures will throw stones at you. You might need to do the dodge roll, which is also available, or ducking down at the right moment, so sometimes you need to time your attacks. In fact, most of this combat system is based around timing. You can even go as far as faking out your opponent, which is really kind of crazy, but it psychs them out. They think that the blow is coming, and then bam, you actually hit them. Unfortunately, it maybe is a little bit too ambitious at times, as this game can feel really sluggish, and that can lead to some frustrating combat experiences. While it's hard to not appreciate the fact that this developer was trying to implement a deep system into a genre of games that's not known for really having such when it pertains to combat, I did ultimately end up pretty annoyed with it just because of the fact that everything is so slow. The game is really dark, and you have to carry this torch, which can make combat even more annoying because it's difficult to see at times, even though I cranked up the brightness in the game. But boy, this can be a pretty obnoxious system. It's difficult to read exactly when your enemies are going to attack. The dodge roll is so sluggish that by the time you turn around, you're pretty much likely to be dead. Making matters even worse is the fact that the biggest enemy in this game is the load screens between each death. Oh, it's really aggravating, the fact that you have to stare at a black screen for 5 to 6 seconds here on the Nintendo Switch version after every single time you die, which is going to be a lot. Ultimately, I felt like I lucked into victory on each encounter. I didn't enjoy the combat system whatsoever, just based on the sluggish nature of this game. I know the game was built to be a cinematic platformer, so obviously these games tend to have a distinct feel, but when you try to have this deep of a combat system, it really just didn't work for me. Outside of that disappointing combat system, though, is a whole lot of platforming and some light puzzle solving too along the way. The platforming isn't as bad as the combat, I would say. Certainly, you do still have that heavy feel that is part of this genre, but it works to surprising effect here. I felt like most of the missed jumps were my fault, as opposed to the combat, where I felt like I was just cheaply dying. But outside of the combat and the platforming, there are a few other interesting mechanics here. For one, you can actually bleed out if you take enough damage, and you'll have to eat herbs in order to stop the bleeding and survive to the next campsite. These campsites act basically as checkpoints. You will revive here should you die, and you can also bulk up your character, increase armor, heal yourself. It's basically a place where you can collect your thoughts and kind of get your health back and get on with the journey from there. Graphically, I felt like Unto the End really had its moments. The outdoor scenes are certainly more appealing than some of the caves. Some of the settings do get a little bit repetitive, but the biggest problem I had with the art style of this game is that just everything is so dang dark. And again, the combat situations where you're trying to fight your way through the darkness, hold this torch which you can easily drop, it's really annoying. I feel like they leaned a little bit too much on the dark atmosphere of this one. I do like the idea of exploring caves with a torch. That's worked well in many video games before, but that's not necessarily the case here, so I ended up being a little bit frustrated with this art style. I like moments and aspects of it, but I think part of the problem for me was the fact that I just died so many times. I got so sick of the loading screens, I got sick of looking at the same areas, and when you kind of explore further and realize that a lot of these areas are just caves again, or you're outside in the snow again, it gets a little bit old. When it comes to the overall sound design of Unto the End, I think it's pretty good. I enjoyed aspects of it. I do wish there was a little bit more music, as there's a lot of ambient sound, but I can kind of understand where the developer was coming from with this idea, as this is a lonely, desolate journey. They don't want to give you any sort of hope or inspiration, just some moody, atmospheric tones going on that work to surprising effect. I overall enjoyed the sound of this game. You will hear the crunches of your footsteps, and then you hear the golems and other creatures kind of yell and scream at you. So there's some pretty solid sound design across the board here. As the credits rolled on this one, which took me about 3 hours because of the many deaths that I encountered, but if you're good at the game, you could probably finish it in 1 or 2 or so, I was left with a feeling of emptiness. The climax of this game is really unsatisfying in my opinion. Despite the fact that you go through so much to get there, I was hoping for a big payoff and I just really didn't get that. That said, there are some aspects of Unto the End that I can definitely appreciate. They did go for a level of in-depth combat that I've not seen in this genre before. I tip my hat, even though I ultimately wasn't a fan of the combat in this game. I think that the setting and the atmosphere is probably the strongest point of this one. That feeling of loneliness and trying to get to the finish line, it works quite well, but the frustrations that you'll experience along the way, I'm not so sure they were worth it. So what do you think, indie game fans? Will you be checking out Unto the End? Let us know in the comments section below. If you have enjoyed our video coverage today, consider hitting that subscribe button. It helps us to bring a voice to the voiceless ones in gaming. There are a ton of other ways to support I Dream of Indie right down in the description box below. We have memberships available on the channel, we have a merchandise store, and so much more, so check it out, and we'll see you next time.